All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Common Fan Podcast. We're happy to have you with us once again. TJ Burkle alongside Matty Owens Sr. and Geoff in Lincoln. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey there.
Hey,
Hey there, Tej. Hey there, Geoff. Hey there, common fans.
Really excited. We got an awesome midseason review pod and a ton of stuff to cover tonight. Really quickly, before we get into that, though, I just want to encourage people to make sure you follow the pod or subscribe to the pod on your platform of choice. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. The handle is at CommonFanGBR. You can also send us an email at commonfangbr@gmail.com. That's commonfangbr@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you contribute to the conversation. Perhaps have your email or tweet read on the show. However you want to do it, we'd love to have you participate. Really excited about kind of the feedback and traction we got after the first episode, and we're back at it here for episode number 2. So it is middle of the week. It's a weeknight. It's a school night after the Friday night victory over Illinois. And so we're going to talk about a ton of stuff here. We're going to kind of walk through the games in the first half of the season. We're kind of do an overview of the offense, the defense, and kind of look ahead for the rest of the season. But just for a minute, guys, how great is it to go, into the bye week? I mean, when was the last time? Should have looked this up. When was the last time we won a Big Ten road game? Any Big Ten road game, first of all, but especially going into a bye week. I mean, it just changes everything. It changes the mood of the fan base, changes the mood around the program. Just a huge boost going into the bye week.
Yeah, I mean, once we got, I think a lot of the haters got tired of nitpicking a conference road victory and how we should have won by more. Now I'm seeing a lot of action on the Twitter or the X or whatever we're calling it these days, talking about how we're 3-3 and the next 3 games are most definitely winnable, which would, if we win those, put us at 6-3. I mean, when's the last time we even imagined or thought about being 6-3? I know that sounds sad, but that's the reality.
right, and that's one thing I was going to bring up too, is being 6-3. I mean, it's just in this day and age of Husker football. TJ, you said it too. We'd be dancing in the streets if we knew we were going to be 6-3 at this point, possibly looking at a bowl game. I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
I can't help it.
But it is exciting to think about. I think we'd be having to do some sort of emergency celebration pod if we got to 6-3. Again, a little bit embarrassing or sad considering where things or where we are as a program, but that is where we are. And that, like, the next step is getting back to a bowl game. Kind of an odd week. Yeah, go ahead, Geoff.
Can I just add something? Can we just also not underestimate the power of some relief going into a bye week? Like, the stress that goes along with having to anticipate a Husker game and get ready for it. It's incredible to me to be able to go into this weekend and just kick my feet up and just enjoy a little bit of that time of soaking in a victory and not having to worry and stress on a Saturday for once in my life. I mean, it's great.
That's such a good point. And the feeling is so much different when you're coming off a win versus coming off a loss. And also then, so not only is this week stress-free, this weekend, we can just enjoy college football. But imagine going into the Northwestern game at 2-4. We're basically like, we're holding our breath, basically the next 3 are must wins. And then you still got to find one more. So it has a huge benefit in a lot of different ways. Matty O, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just was going to add that the other part is our team is so banged up. It's just good to have a week off, get some guys healthy. And now we got the news about Marcus Washington, which is unfortunate, but I feel like it'll be really relaxing to sit back and watch some other Big Ten West teams lose this weekend while we just are 0-0 on the weekend, no wins, no losses, and just watch everyone else kick the crap out of each other.
And it was just staying on Illinois for a minute. It was kind of an odd week leading up to the game. So first of all, I always forget that Illinois Stadium is also called Memorial Stadium, but that's fake Memorial Stadium.
Yeah,
exactly.
We talked about this last week a little bit, or on the last show, and Illinois definitely fits into this category. They can't get people into that stadium. And so, but then, so I don't know, it was like Tuesday night or Wednesday night before the game, and fake Memorial Stadium catches on fire. And so there was like this brief moment, or I don't know, a half hour or an hour, where there's all this confusion on Twitter, and it's like, well, are we going to be able to play the game there? I hope everyone's okay, but what's going on? And then it ended up being fine. I think what happened, guys, and look, we're here to ask the questions the media won't ask. We're here to ask the tough questions. I think that, Bert Bielema he's there late at night and he's watching film, and look, he's a good coach. He knows what he's looking at, and he sees, okay, we're going to run into the buzzsaw that is the Nebraska offense. All right, we're gonna have a hard time stopping Heinrich Haarberg, and it's basically he's squinting because he's not sure if it's Haarberg and the boys or the 1983 scoring explosion. And look, he's stressing out, and he knows, like, look, we're not going to be able to stop these guys. We're not going to be able to move the ball. It's late at night. No one else is there. So, he goes to make himself a couple of tombstones. And so, it's just, he's the only one there. So he makes 2 tombstones instead of more than that.
He strikes me as a Totino's guy, to be quite honest with you.
It might have been Totino's. I don't know. Again, no one's getting to the bottom of this, so we have to do it. But this is probably what happened. And, old Bert decides to stress eat a little bit because he knows he's just going to get overpowered by the Cornhuskers, which is, of course, what happened. And he ends up setting fake Memorial Stadium on fire.
Yeah. I mean, so he's so entrenched in the college football industrial complex. I mean, this is a total plausible theory that you have here, TJ. He's in on it. And I think RIP to a legend and Dick Butkus. He was an Illini graduate. And I think that he might have been so entrenched in the college football industrial complex that either A, he's been offed, or B, he's faked his own death. I mean, he may still be out there, but he's so deep entrenched in this that they convinced him to fake his own death to try and derail the Cornhuskers. It may have worked with the Bears. The Bears may have won on Thursday. It's not working with us. It didn't work with us.
It didn't work with us.
It didn't work. We didn't let it work. We didn't get thrown off. The fire department arrived on time, and they were able to get to the kitchen and contain the fire. And then the Huskers come in and just really physically dominate that game.
Absolutely.
So well,
I just have this mental picture of Bert sitting there with his shirt off and tombstone pizza cheese dripping down his chest.
And
fire department comes in and, Bert, put your pants back on.
And I mean, the thing about it is, you almost feel bad for the guy because he knows what he's looking at. He's a good coach. He's had some success, and he's realizing, I can't stop this juggernaut. I mean, we're not going to be able to stop this offense led by Heinrich Haarberg and Ty Hahn and Alex Bullock and a bunch of Nebraska boys. And we're sure as heck not going to be able to move the ball on offense. And that's what happened. And, so, the Huskers just came in and steamrolled the Illini. And boy, another point on this Illinois game. And then we'll get back to the
your regularly scheduled podcast.
Regularly scheduled program. I mean, how good does it feel? Talk about we talked about this on the last pod. It's second-rate program. They've never won anything. This is absolutely the kind of team that we should just be crushing and really should never lose to. And it just feels good to put them in their place, get a W, move on. Bert could barely bring himself to shake Rule's hand after the game, which was ridiculous. But you know what? See you later. Good luck going home early this year. Just felt great to get that W, put them in their place, and head into the bye week.
Well, don't you think? I think at least for me, and I think maybe you guys too. Great to get a conference road win, but to have it be against a Bert Bielema coach team. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of exorcism going on beating him. That's still flashbacks of his Wisconsin teams, just shredding us, running the ball, and the jet sweeps and all that stuff. Part of it, it's great to get a conference road. I don't know when the last one we had was, but to have it be against Bert too was fantastic.
Completely agree. It kind of makes you wonder. I mean, that Wisconsin program was just a well-oiled machine for years, regardless of who was the coach.
Right.
Then he goes to Arkansas, doesn't go very well. His first couple of years at Illinois were average by, most standards, pretty good for Illinois standards. But even that, Lovey, for whatever reason, could never put all the pieces together. But he had some talent. He had some guys who are now in the NFL. It just sort of makes you wonder about Bert, if he can build something sustainable. He's been able to coach well when, sort of handed a program that was already in good shape. But I think people expected them to be better this year, and they're a disaster.
Right. And you think about it, it didn't really go that well for him at Arkansas. Woo Pig Suey.
Exactly.
Things did not go that well for Bert down there.
No.
I mean, the thing that Bert does have going for him, I mean, with a body like that and still being able to pull a very attractive wife I respect that. I respect him because clearly, and I'm not a slender man, but Bert does not look very healthy. And he's got very young children too. So, put 2 and 2 together. I have a little respect for him. I don't like him, but I respect him.
You got to tip the cap.
You got to tip the cap to Bert.
Absolutely. You do have to tip the cap. And that is well said, dude.
Okay. Back to your regularly scheduled program. We're going to walk through the first 6 games, how we got to this point at 3-3. And again, guys, we could very well be 4-2, but considering how the season started, I got to be honest with you, I feel really good about being 3-3.
Mm-hmm.
Was not sure how to feel about that Illinois game going into it. And we really showed out, and the boys really responded to Coach Rule. So really excited to be 3-3. When I think about the first 6 games, guys, I don't know why I sort of thought the first thing that came to my mind was it's kind of like a tale of 3 2-game seasons. We had this arc, three separate arcs, right? Minnesota and Colorado. We start with 2 away Power 5 teams, kind of have a history with both of them. And then we have Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech. First 2 home games of the Matt Rule era, obviously not Power 5 teams, games that you feel like you should win, but everybody's feeling a little shaky going into those games. And then, the start of or resuming conference play with Michigan and Illinois. I think everyone sort of knew how that Michigan game would go, or sort of knew what the final result would be at least. And then, wondering how we'd respond in Illinois. So just let's start with the first 2 games set here in Minnesota and Colorado. And what jumped out to me was they were both disappointing losses. They were kind of different kind of games, I felt, in a lot of ways. But they encapsulate so much of what we've lived through as a fan base for the last several years. So there's some games, and we'll start with let's start with Colorado. There's some games you say we could have won that game. Like we lost 36-14. I don't think it's really fair or legit to say, well, we should have won that game. No, we shouldn't have. But that was due to our own mistakes as much as anything. We made a ton of turnovers. But like if you look at it was 0-0 with 5 minutes to go before halftime. It was 13-7, halfway through the third quarter. And so like that was a ball game. We kept turning the ball over. It never felt like we could get on track. And then the defense was on the field for too long. Colorado has some playmakers, and they just kind of ran away with it. So that was kind of one of those where it never felt right from the beginning. Didn't feel like the guys were quite prepared.
But we were in the game in the third quarter. I mean, you're right. It was 13-7. And if you remember, it was a third down. And they threw a deep ball and completed it over Tommy Hill. And then it was like, and that to me, that felt like,
right. That was a 3rd and long too.
Yeah. To me, that felt like, it kind of just felt like game over. Like we had them get off the field and go down and get points. And then it felt like after that play happened, it was like, we were done. That was the last. That's
the
what
wheels
it felt
did kind of fall off. Although the whole go down and get points thing felt really hard all day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's be realistic. We got lucky getting points even with Sims.
To do it.
I mean, basically it was broken. It was broken play on the defense, and he was able to run 50 some yards for a touchdown.
Yep. The main takeaway I took that game solidified for me, at least, that the defense might be back. Even though we lost that game, I felt like that was the game I realized that, dear Lord, we might have something at least special on one side of the ball for sure this time. And that's the first time I've been confident in saying that in quite some time, that we had something good going, that I could at least see that. That was my main takeaway from that game is, man, Colorado, because this was at the time when Colorado was hyped up, like whether you want to admit it or not, people were literally salivating at the thought of Colorado winning a national title this year.
Oh yeah, that felt like kind of when we played them, and then even the following week against CSU, I felt like we were right in the peak of like mass hysteria, Dion, Shador, Sanders, Prime, Coach Prime, all that. I feel like we caught them at the worst possible time.
Absolutely. I mean, that was when they were just on their upward trajectory. Yep. Go ahead, TJ.
It was also nauseating. I mean,
totally.
And I think we talked about this a little bit on the last one. Coach Prime deserves some credit, right? Yeah. I mean, they're as of this recording, they're 4-2 right now. They were 1-11 last year. He absolutely deserves some credit, but everyone was talking about them as if they were, 2019 LSU or something like that, or last year's Georgia team. And they got a long way. They've got a long way to go still.
Sure.
But it was tough, especially given our history with the program. It was tough to catch them when we did, and have to listen to all that. It was pretty obnoxious.
You know how I feel about how Minnesota and Colorado went. I equate it to, when you're sick, you got the stomach flu, and you've just been barfing. You've just been barfing so much, and you kind of feel like, okay, I think I've got it all out. Now is when I turn the corner. And then there's a couple more barfs left in you. That's how I feel about Minnesota and Colorado. There were enough things in there in those two games where you're like, okay, this looks better. This looks promising. Yeah. But we still had to puke a little bit more. Get it all out so we could start turning the corner. And that's how I feel about those two. Those first two games in your 3 2-game seasons. I love how you put that, because that feels like what this really has been.
Well, and talking about Minnesota for a minute. So it was funny, because I felt going into Colorado, I thought we had a better chance of winning that one. Going into Minnesota, I thought this is a tall ask of Coach Rule, first year head coach. It's a Big Ten team that for whatever reason, we've had trouble putting away. We mostly played them, we've had good close games with them, but they always seem to play more disciplined, more sound. We just had trouble beating them. As painful as
Thursday night. I mean, that's another thing.
Thursday night away Big Ten game. And so I just kind of thought we didn't know what to expect of Coach Rule and the boys. And honestly, I don't know about you guys. The first half felt like we were kind of like hanging on. And I know we should have scored right at the end of the half, and we had the Jeff Sims turnover, but I honestly felt like it could have been worse. Like it sort of felt like we couldn't get off the field on third down. Didn't know what to think. It was like, okay, well, we should have scored, but I'll take 3-0. Then for most of the second half, I was like, wait a second. I think we're the better team here.
Yeah.
Like the defense was just shutting the Gophers down. The offense, put up 10 points. It hasn't been pretty or perfect. I think that was what was so frustrating about the Minnesota game. And I talked about Colorado being one kind of loss, representative of one kind of loss that we've lived through. Minnesota's a different one. So Colorado's one of those, we could have won that game if about 15 different things had gone differently, or if we had sort of started differently or finished the half differently, whatever. Minnesota's literally one of those, we should have won the game.
Should have, yeah.
Like we've had so many of those too, where it's literally one or two plays. Anthony Grant just hangs onto the ball. There's a pretty dang good chance because we were moving the ball on him. We were running the ball. It's a pretty good chance we
luck
win that
fell
game.
Our way too. I mean, our score was off of a botched trick play that ended up just working out.
Yeah.
Like the grace of God.
Yeah. When was the last time that happened?
Yeah. So those are
what it is? It's the college football industrial complex actually letting us get a few bounces because we are onto them. If they're listening, and I know they're listening out here, we are going to expose you for keeping us down for far too long. CFIC, your days are numbered.
Yeah, it's important to get that in. Thank you. So anyway, so we start 0-2. I don't think anybody going into the season, like before we saw Colorado beat TCU or before we knew whatever, like I don't think anybody expected an 0-2 start, especially with Colorado coming off a 1-11 season. I think everyone thought, that's a pretty decent chance. I know folks had hope for Minnesota, at least figured, okay, let's just give us one of those two and we'll feel pretty good. So we go 0-2, and we'll transition to the next 2-game series with Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech.
Before you jump, DJ,
can I
throw something in there real quick? Yeah. Is I think probably the thing that hurt the most about the 0-2 start for me personally was just the fact that we had this minuscule, tiny chance to just cram it up Fleck's butt. And we just couldn't do it. I mean, Fleck is the guy in college football, the shady used car salesman, the snake oil guy. He's all about talk. I can't stand the dude. And we had him in our sights and we just blew it.
And don't you guys kind of feel like his days might be numbered there? Like he's going to try to jump ship for another job.
I don't know. First of all, I want to respond to you, Geoff. That is such a good point, and it would have felt so good to beat him and beat them. And it feels like coulda, woulda, shoulda, but it feels like we've had them several times like that and just not been able to pull it out, and it's so aggravating. To your point, Matt, I kind of don't know. I think he has elevated. I mean, he has been better than a lot of what they've seen there, and so he's elevated the bar and made people excited and sort of engaged the fan base. But also, like, he's in this market where people love the Vikings and the Twins,
right?
And the T-Wolves, and it's kind of like, when Northwestern comes back from 3 touchdowns and beats them, Gopher fans are upset, but like they're not calling for his job. It's not the same thing.
It's kind of like
I don't know. That'd be pretty nice.
When you sign up for Fleck coming to coach your team, you got to be, to me, again, TJ, to borrow a phrase from you, a second-rate program. You've got to be willing to totally go down the douchiest path, less traveled, to go with the row the boat, all that whole gimmick, and him sprinting out on the field just looking like a total weirdo. And because I heard his name thrown around for Michigan State now with all the Mel Tucker stuff, and I'm like, God, I don't know if his act would work there after, because when I think Michigan State, like recency, I know, but I think of Mark D'Antonio, and like this like stoic guy on the sideline just looks pissed off all the time, and like I don't know if that kind of guy would work at that place, but. Gosh, and I don't know who would want to put up with him personally.
We're one thing we're not going to, because this is a family friendly program. So one thing we're not going to do is get into the Mel Tucker situation.
No, we don't need to talk about.
But you think about him pre-scandal, he's very similar, like a very serious, stoic guy, kind of a hard-nosed coach. It would seem like an odd fit to me for PJ to go to Michigan State. I think he could probably get another job or get some interest in another job. But I do agree. I think a place would have to be, they would have to know themselves pretty well and be pretty confident that like that's the right fit for them, because it's not the right fit every place. I don't think it would be the right fit in Lincoln, frankly.
No, it would get old. People would get sick of it real fast.
Yeah, and you know what? I promise we'll move on here shortly, Common fans. One other thing, since we're still on these first 2 games, that I meant to mention about Coach Prime. By the way, do you guys want to hear my Coach Prime impersonation?
Yes, please.
All right, this is actually not where I was going with this, but and my wife is one sick of this, and 2 not impressed by it. So I might be setting myself up for embarrassment here, but let me try this here. We ain't coming no more. We here.
It's not bad.
That was pretty good. I thought you were playing a recording for a second there.
I don't believe you, but thank you for saying that. Sorry, that's not what I was going to say. I do believe that Coach Prime, he has I don't know if you can really call it created a new phrase, but he's created this new phrase and added it to the lexicon, I actually think I want to start using it. I feel like it rolls off the tongue really well. Bull junk.
Bull junk.
Bull junk. And normally he's talking about it when he's airing his grievances about how various reporters and news outlets have not given his team enough credit, and he has the receipts. But I feel like, again, family-friendly program, I think we should start saying bull junk, and we should all strive to incorporate that into our daily lives, even
I do
because
like
it gets the same point across. It feels good coming off the tongue, but it's a little cleaner.
I like it. And you know what? Just one more thing about Deion. I kind of feel like sometimes when he's talking to the media, we get Coach Prime, and other times we get Deion Sanders. I feel like when we get Deion Sanders, you're getting a guy who's been around the block and he's serious and he knows football. Coach Prime is out there talking about Shador and how he's one of the best in the game. He's learned from Tom Brady.
Sunglasses.
He's giving him all his players sunglasses, and he's doing all that extra stuff that I don't really think he needs to do. And I think he's turning a lot of people away, turning them off by some of the brash stuff that he's doing. But I think he has the capability of being a really good football coach who has good messages a lot of the time to the media and his team. Just sometimes the way that when he turns into Coach Prime, and it's about I'm bringing my own luggage with me, and it's Louis and all that stuff. I think he turns away a lot of people. I've always liked Deion, but I'm getting kind of sick of the act. Let's put it that way.
And it's really interesting you say that. I hate Colorado. I could get I could lose some street cred with this. I don't hate Deion. I don't have
I don't either.
Thank you.
Obviously, there's an act there at some points. I used to watch some of the stuff that he would say, even when he was at his previous job. And if you listen to what he preaches to his teams, it's about accountability.
Yeah,
it's about hard work. It's about doing your job. And so, it's actually a lot of old school messages, and they've talked about this on some of the TV broadcasts about, that staff refers to themselves as old school. And so, look, if that's what they're instilling in their programs, I know, especially Husker fans want to write them off, and say it's kind of a one-hit wonder type of situation. Mm-hmm. If he's staying at Colorado, I mean, we've got them on the schedule next year. I think we got them on the schedule again in the not too distant future. Yeah. You have to take this guy seriously.
Yeah, and we should play them frequently. And by the way, we're going to beat the brakes off of them next year at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, yes, we are. Okay, all right, we've got to move on. That was a really satisfying conversation about Minnesota and Colorado there. Okay, we probably won't spend quite as long on these two games. Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. Look, Huskers took care of business. They did what they were supposed to do. I think in both games, it didn't feel quite, you kind of want to go into those games against teams you feel like you should beat and just run out to like a 28-0 first quarter lead or something like that. And, we didn't do that. But we also, the defense, Geoff, to reinforce your point from a minute ago, the defense continued to look strong and continued to play well. And neither of those offenses could really get much going. Louisiana Tech had some success throwing the ball, but neither team could run the ball at all. Neither team scored a lot of points. And so, they did what they needed to do. That we kind of needed to reset the narrative, inject some positive vibes into the program. You had to win both of those games. I mean, we all remember the not too distant past with both Frost and Riley, losing to Frost with Troy and Riley with Northern Illinois. And I mean, that is just doom and gloom in the fan base. That can ruin that can set things off on a really bad track for the entire season. So look, they took care of business at least.
Yep. Lunch pail.
Yeah.
Lunch pail games. Bring the lunch pail.
Those two.
Oh, I don't. Again, like you said, I don't think there's much to say about them. Like you had, there was some uneasiness there. But fact of the matter was, at least I remember with Louisiana Tech, it really felt like we were turning it on, and I think were we up 28-7, and then there's a flipping weather delay. Like again. Yep. What is it with us and all these weather delays lately? But it felt like if the weather delay didn't happen, I feel like we maybe get one more score on the board, and we may end up winning by one more touchdown. and covering the spread if anyone cares about that kind of stuff. But no, they were, those two games were just like, okay, let's go in, let's play good D, take care of business, put some points on the board, just get out of here and win.
Yep.
And try to get out of here healthy. And of course that didn't happen. I can't remember which one of those games was we lost our running backs. I mean,
right.
So that hurt in those two, but again, we had to get wins there. So, but yeah, that's all I got on those. Business as usual.
I agree with the uneasiness, and like, I won't lie, the way the season started, especially with the way we lost to Minnesota, that kind of set that precedent again of, oh, are we just doing this all over again? We're blowing close games. So when we got to Northern Illinois, I certainly was concerned and was not convinced that this was just, there was nothing in our history and nothing so far this season that had shown me that this was a guaranteed lock of a victory. You know what I mean? Like, going into this game, I legit was nervous. Once we got through Northern Illinois, though, it was kind of refreshing and almost a positive takeaway that I thought against Louisiana Tech, that I think that I'm comfortable enough in assuming that we might be able to just win. I didn't feel stressed about that one as much as I normally would in years past. I felt like it's sad to say it, but it feels good to know that I can hang my hat on assuming that on, not a conference team, someone that we should beat. I don't want to say cupcake because it might be a little disrespectful, but for the most part in the past, I didn't think that we were guaranteed to win with those teams. And it was kind of nice to come through and just say, hey, it's not so much to worry about anymore as it has been in years past. It kind of felt good. It was
well, and I think there's something to be said for that. And I know the fan base doesn't want to hear it, and we're probably in that group too, right? Because we're all, just about out of patience. But there's something to be said for that. Like, we have to acknowledge where we've been since the end of the Riley era and pretty much all of the Frost era. And part of that has been not being able to close out games and not being able to win games where we played well enough to win otherwise, not being able to close the deal in those games. And I think for a long time, Husker fans sort of thought, well, we're not that far off and we don't need to think about, we have to relearn how to do that. And even I would say, this is again, probably a longer conversation for a separate pod, but people would talk about, the mistakes that haunt the program. They're year over year. They go through multiple coaching staffs, multiple roster changes, and they're still happening. And people would make the point there's something going on with the psyche of the players or the mindset of the program or the culture.
It's the curse, TJ. It's the curse. And we can talk about that at some point.
Well, but for the longest time, I thought, nah, come on. We were all, even if you played a high school sport, you're excited to be out there. You're excited to play. I don't feel like athletes think about that stuff as much. And maybe that's true, but I'm starting to believe there's however much validity you give to that line of thinking. It's clear, like, we haven't had a winning season or even a 500 season since 2016. So you've got to close out the games that you should close out. And we didn't do that with Minnesota, but it's nice to have seen us do it. Three out of the last, the last, basically, let's take Michigan out of the equation. The last 3 games that were competitive, we closed the deal. Right. And so that's not right. Again, Husker fans might scoff at how it looked at times or who the opponents were, but we're not in a position to scoff at that sort of thing, boys.
No, I think we need to get past, as Husker fans, we need to get past how it should look when we win. Who cares how it looks if we win? I mean, I hate to compare us to Iowa because I just can't stand them, but
don't you
look how ugly they have won this year, and they're 5-1. They have a worse offense than we do, and they're 5-1. They have won with good defense, tackling, and then the offense will score 1 touchdown, they'll kick 3 field goals, and they win the game. Yeah. And they just find a way to win. I would rather be like that, as much as it pains me to say, than be winning 55-45 because we just scored more points than the other team, because that doesn't last. That's not something that you can, to me, that you can hang your hat on week to week. because your quarterback throws a couple of picks. Oh, then you're losing 55-45.
Yeah,
and
right.
To me,
Right.
it's still that, and I hate the word is getting so overused, but culture. When you build a culture and we're going to tackle really well, we're going to play our butts off, and we're going to hang in it till the very end, and somebody's going to make a play. Yeah. I'm good with that.
Absolutely.
Should we have beat Illinois 37-7? Probably, but we won 20-7 in a road conference victory, boys.
Exactly. When we're dancing in the streets, when we make the toilet.com bowl, being played on December 17th, which is 10 a.m. on a Tuesday in December or something, we're not going to care. We're going to be dancing.
No, we're not going to care.
All the same.
Nope.
All right. So at this point, through the first 4 games, Huskers are 2-2 going into the Michigan game. I think, I don't know. I didn't talk to many Husker fans who thought we were going to win the Michigan game, but I think a lot of people thought, well, like Michigan's kind of one of these ground and pound teams. They're kind of a slow burn team. Our defense has been really good at stopping the run. So maybe we could keep this thing 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. Maybe it could be 7-3 at halftime or something. Maybe we're making it interesting.
And did that happen? No.
And instead, the whole game, literally from the start of the game, that part in Wedding Crashers when Owen Wilson is going through a hard time and he's kind of depressed, and his answering machine, because they still had landlines and answering machines when they made that movie, which is crazy to think about. But his recording of his answering machine is just whatever. That's just what the whole Michigan game felt like.
Yeah.
Or that's how it felt watching them play. Like we don't need to spend a lot of time on it because whatever. But whether they psych themselves out or whatever, they didn't bring the energy. I think they were nervous. I think scared, whatever word you want to use. And then, got a couple bad breaks early with the unbelievable touchdown catch. But the Michigan receiver catches it. Was that Newsom or
Gifford?
It only happens to
us. Catches it behind Gifford's back.
Yeah.
And then on our first drive, Haarberg's ball gets batted up. It goes 470. 400. What's that?
Didn't a lineman snag that thing or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, it felt like it hung up in the air forever. It went up about 417 feet and landed delicately into the soft hands of a Michigan defensive lineman. And of course, they go down and score. I mean, it just felt like if there was any air in the balloon, the rest of it got sucked out at that point. But it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I think, we're not X's and O's guys here, but I've heard it talked about enough. I think the Husker coaches, not too far into that game, put some of their more specialized stuff back into the playbook. They didn't want to show anybody too much, any future teams watching film. I think they realized that was what it was. Let's try to get out of here without anybody getting hurt. They mostly achieved that. Lost to Sean Singleton that game, which hurt.
Yeah.
But look, that's might be the best team in the country. It's certainly one of the best.
They could be.
Yeah, probably a playoff team.
Yes. For sure.
And we're just not. We're just not there.
But I kind of liked how candid Rule was after that game too. Like he was just talking about how they're where we want to be, and he's like they're just way better than us. He didn't sugarcoat anything. It wasn't like when we got just absolutely demolished by them. It was at Frost's first year. And then everyone was talking about when he was with UCF, and he said, well, we hit harder than they did. Well, yeah, but they beat you by 30 points, Scott. So he didn't sugar. I found that refreshing. And then how he came out and said, you're going to find out what team we are on Friday when we go to Illinois. I love that. I love that.
Well, I mean, I really think we're going to look back at that as a turning point in the year. And they played on Saturday. And then they came back out and they practiced on Sunday, which they don't normally do. And had a really physical practice on Sunday. Yeah. And he kind of put it to the guys and said, that's not good enough. That's not up to the standard that we have for this team. Kind of put their manhood on the line and put himself on the line, the way he phrased it to the public and to the media. And the team really responded to that. I mean, I think if the team hadn't responded to that and it fell flat at Illinois, we might all be kind of saying, ooh.
Yeah.
I think it's
Tony White too. He said a few things on those same lines of like, hey, you're going to play at Nebraska. That's not good enough. And by the way, Tony White as DC, my God, like what are we like? We held. I saw a stat. We've held was it 4 out of the 6 teams we played like 100 yards under their season average per game. Like that's outstanding rush defense. We're saying if you want to beat us, go ahead and try to beat us throwing the ball, but you're not going to throw it over the top of us. And I'm just loving it.
Well, a couple things on that point. First of all, like Nebraska should never not have a great defense. And so it's just like is this? I mean, this defense is really good. Maybe I don't know if they're quite great yet. We got pretty spoiled there for a while, but it's so great to have a defense that you feel like you can rely on and you feel like can keep you in any game. And Tony White deserves so much credit for that. I think they're going to have to pay that man in the offseason. Yeah. I think we should all let's be real. I think we're going to have to. He stated coming into the job that he wants to be a head coach someday. So I think we need to prepare ourselves that we'll be lucky if we keep him for another year or two. And you just hope at that point that he sort of installed the program and the culture to enough of a degree that you either go out and find somebody else who can do the same thing, or you can promote one of the assistants to run the defense. Hope to God we can have him for a few more years. They need to pay that man his money.
I mean, it's so nice to see like any of our defense be able to make a tackle in like open space. I forgot what that was like to see that happen.
Oh, yeah.
I was confident where, it's a one-on-one. Oh, we got him. Thank God. Like in years past, I felt like it was always just guys going for like the big hit, the highlight reel type thing. And they're just doing it the right way now where they're bringing people down one-on-one. And that's so damn important. It just feels good. It's refreshing.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, just, I don't know about scheme, but just the missed tackles over the years. I was watching USC versus Arizona, that triple overtime game. And let me tell you that USC team is a poor tackling team.
Yeah.
But that was giving me like flashbacks and PTSD from watching the Husker defense.
Right.
Because that was us for the longest time. It was so aggravating.
Yeah. They can put up a ton of points, and then their defense just keeps every team in the game. I mean, Notre Dame might have a shot with them next week. I'm looking forward to that. So that'll be a pretty good game. What do you think about that, T?
This is a Husker football podcast, Jeff.
I think that's bull junk, Geoff. That's what I think. We don't, in the Godfather when Sonny tells Carlo, we don't discuss the business at the table. We're gonna have to keep saying that to you.
We don't discuss the Irish at the table, Jeff.
We don't discuss the Irish at the table, Jeff. This is a Husker football. Guiding principle number 1: all Husker football all the time. All right, Geoff.
All right. I'm sorry.
Nothing about Notre Dame.
Track for a second. I'm back now.
Okay. For the common fans who are listening who don't know, Geoff is a Husker fan. He grew up in Lincoln. We've known him since childhood, or at least since junior high. Somehow in that household, they were also Notre Dame fans. So we try not to judge him too harshly for that. But you just need to be reminded, we don't discuss the Irish at the table, Geoff.
I'm sorry. It's just I can't help myself sometimes. It's in my blood.
Jeff, it must be nice to have 2 college football teams that you are able to root for. One loses one weekend. You never know. The other one might win. I wonder what that's like. It must be nice.
I've never really heard of that.
Must be nice.
I try to have a set of principles going through life. I've never really heard of having 2 college football teams. It's fine, Geoff. It's fine. There's no judgment here.
No. I'm proud of where I come from in the fabric of my being a native Nebraskan, and proud of it. So yeah, more power to you, Geoff.
Okay. So all right, that pretty much wraps up the first half. It's nice the bye week is exactly halfway through the season. So we kind of talked about Illinois already. The biggest takeaway, again, other than Bert setting fake Memorial Stadium on fire, making tombstones. The
And
biggest
Dick Butkus is still alive, you guys.
and
Do
that.
not forget about
He's
that.
cryogenically frozen, and they're going to unthaw him when the economy gets better.
The biggest thing is the bounce back, right? The biggest takeaway for the program is the way Matt Rule challenged the guys, challenged himself. We came out and got a Big Ten road win on short rest after getting kind of beat up by Michigan to get to 3-3 going into the bye week. So that's like, to me, that's the biggest and most important takeaway. And I think, again, if we get to that bowl game, if we're dancing in the streets on, December 14th at 10:30 a.m. For the whatever bowl, it's going to be, we're going to look back and say that was kind of the turning point. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here. We just kind of talked about the defense a little bit, but I wanted to get your guys' take kind of on kind of a big picture overview of how the D has looked, how the offense has looked, how the D has looked. We can talk about special teams a little bit. And then we're going to wrap things up by looking ahead to the final 6 games, and we're going to rank them hardest to easiest, and we're going to make predictions. And then we're going to get out of here. So, Matt, you shared something with the Common Fan Board of Directors earlier. This is really interesting. This is from Arbitrary Analytics.
Very good Twitter follow, by the way.
Good Twitter follow. The list of teams with at least 1,200 yards rushing and holding opponents below 500 total yards rushing. There's 2 teams on that list.
Yeah.
The Air Force Falcons, and who do you think the other one is?
The Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Nebraska Cornhuskers. So my first thought on this, and this probably isn't fair to the Huskers, but in the show The Office, when like Michael Scott, like something that should have been embarrassing would happen to him, and like he didn't realize it, and he was proud of it.
Yeah.
So I was sort of wondering if this is one of those things. I'm not sure if we should be proud of this. And God bless the students at the Air Force Academy. Thank you for your service. I'd rather be lumped in a statistical category with, Georgia and Ohio State and Michigan,
Alabama and Michigan,
but I guess I think a positive spin on this is what are 2 things the Husker fans have complained about for the longest time: the fact that we can't/don't run the ball, or we don't even commit to running the ball, and defense, stopping the run. And that's clearly, schemes might change, systems might change, coordinators might change. But I think those 2 things, really being a defensive football team overall, is clearly really important to Matt Rule. He said that much after, it was either after the Michigan game or the Illinois game, but especially stopping the run. And then he wants to run the ball. He said, he's also said he wants to run for 250 plus yards a game. So, I mean, I think that if anything, that stat is indicative of, okay, that his priorities are at least taking hold. There's a lot of sloppy things we need to clean up, but that's complimentary football, and that can win you some games.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the main takeaway for me from that stat was, that's a brand of football, right? Like, that Air Force and really all the military academies, they're going to try to run it down your dang throat, and they're going to tackle well. And that's what we want, right? You look at the numbers, we're averaging 200 rush yards a game. And that's a pretty bad, I don't know how many yards we had against Michigan. I don't know if we cracked 100. We might have with the Josh Fleek's garbage time 70-some yarder. But we're running for 200 yards a game. We're running for 5 yards per attempt. Like those are, if you didn't watch those games, you'd be like, well, Nebraska runs the football fairly well. Like that'd be my takeaway if I wasn't the hardcore fan that I am.
Right.
Now, could we run the ball better to better set up the pass? Yes, we could. But that would involve being a little bit better at throwing the ball, which we can't do. What I would personally love to see is, we started to integrate that option, right? Started to integrate that option, and God love him, Heine's trying to pitch the ball, He's trying to get that pitch out to Grant. A couple times it looked okay. I would love them to bring back that little option pass that we used to run. I mean, Frazier ran it well, Crouch went. Even Jamal Lord could do that thing where it looks exactly like the option, and then the quarterback just pops back. There's like almost like a backwards crow hop, and then pops it over the top.
Streaking down the field
to Tommy Fedone.
Yep.
And it'd be because it would always be like Tracy Wistrom or Matt Herrion, and that tight end would be running wide open. If we could incorporate, and I'm not saying it has to be that, but if we could do like run, boom, hit over the top with somebody. I know we're depleted at receiver, but do something to the tight end. I mean, I think Fedone is my favorite player on the Husker offense, for the record, for sure.
Clearly. Yeah.
The guy, and he just because to me, he plays and seems like he's like a killer. Like he's got like Mamba mentality. Like he just wants to rip the other team's heart out. And I don't know how many guys like that we've had for a number of years now. So I love how they're getting him more involved, and I hope he gets even more involved.
Well, and I hope they're taking the bye week to like let's narrow down the menu here.
Yeah.
Let's look at who's still healthy.
Simplify.
Let's look at what we do well. I mean, they literally have been learning this option stuff on the fly from Ron Brown. They've said as much. And so like the offense it has not been pretty. You know, you point to this, you know, like total offense is ranked 102. Okay. Rushing O is in the top 25, at least. Passing offense is down in, you know, Iowa territory at 125.
Oof.
Most of the offensive categories are not good. I think it's you have to acknowledge, you got to be a little bit fair, you know. Satterfield's taken a lot of flack, and I think some of that is deserved. I think it was Glenn Mason when he was coaching at Kansas. He had a son was one of those guys at Kansas. He had a son in high school, and the local media asked him, "What do you do during your son's games?" And he said, "I do what everybody else does. I buy a Coke and a hot dog, and I sit in the stands and I complain about the play calling." So like every like play caller at every level of football is probably the most criticized, you know, person in the whole coaching outfit, right? Yeah. And so, but I think to be fair to Satterfield, coming into this season, we thought we were going to have Xavier Betts. Potentially, you know, we know he has game-changing speed. Decided not to play football anymore. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda got hurt.
Yeah, first game.
Yeah, three or four games in one of those two home games. I think it was the first one, right?
I think the first game.
Both Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson. No, sorry, I meant it was yeah. And then, you know, two of your top three running backs out for this season. Jeff Sims has been hurt. I know there's varying opinions on that, and I sort of wonder how hurt he really is, or if the coaches are just sort of using that to kind of protect him and give themselves an opportunity to bring him back. But either way, like the guy you thought was going to be your guy has not been your guy. And then we got the news today about the Marcus Washington stuff. And so like, he deserves some grace, right? I think where fans get frustrated, and I would include myself, I would include this common fan in this category, is you look at the leap that the defense took in one off season. And I know there's some seasoned guys on that side of the ball, you know, Reimer and Henrich and Newsome, and, you know, so there's some players that have logged a lot of snaps at the college level on the defensive side of the ball, but that's kind of true of at least the O-line and some of these other players on offense. And we're still seeing penalties and turnovers. And, you know, Rule said after the Illinois game, he was kind of harping on, he felt like the Illinois players were chirping too much and causing some players to move. But he said, well, you know, we're not an undisciplined team. Well, it doesn't look like a disciplined team.
Right.
I don't know.
And don't you think some of the frustration, I think, is like everybody, we're smart enough as Husker fans to know when we see a disciplined, good offensive line. Yes. And it's typically the offensive line or a tight end. I feel like Borkature has had like, I don't know how many false starts this year. And it's always like, okay, one of the five linemen jumped. Okay. So it's like, I don't know. For me, that's one's position group on our offense. There's a lot of starts there on that offensive line, guys. Like if anyone should be the leaders on that offense, there's 2 or 3 offensive linemen there that have 2 seasons worth of starts. Like, let's clean that up a little bit.
At the very least, you got to cut back on the penalties, right? If
Yeah,
you
those
still
types of
got, if you
shouldn't
still
happen
got,
anymore.
sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Teach.
I was just going to say, I mean, if you still got guys, winning one-on-one battles against you, okay, we can work on that. But like at least clean up the penalties.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think I was talking to some folks during the Illinois game. I think the concern with the offense is, can they hang on to the ball long enough to give the defense breaks? And can they score enough to not spoil this really good defense this year, right? Because it felt like we kind of scored. We scored back-to-back touchdowns against Illinois. Wasn't the stat? It was.
We scored like 2 touchdowns in 10 seconds.
Yeah,
like
what? 10
so like
seconds.
before that, it was like it felt like it was 3-0 for a really long time, and maybe that was just partly in my head. But I said to a few people, like, this is where this offense struggling so bad is really a concern, because the defense could play great, but they give up. They have one breakdown, one big play, and it's 7-3, and you're losing all of a sudden, right? Yeah. Or a special teams mistake, and it's 7-3 or 10-3 or 14-3 or whatever. And so the offense, again, I just love to see them take the time this bye week to figure out who's left standing, what do they have to work with, really drill down on that. And again, I like what Rule says when he says we're a defensive football team. Then you gotta complement it on offense. And there's times when I wonder if things get lost in translation, or if Rule just lets Satterfield completely call the plays, because there's times when it's like we just need to hold the ball. And this goes back to even when Sims was playing, like Sims or Haarberg, 3 plays in a row, just straight drop back.
Yeah.
Like not even rolling them out, not even play action, just straight drop back. It's like,
no,
you don't really have the pieces to be doing it like this.
No. But there was that one moment, the camera for the Illinois game caught it, where we were on offense and we called timeout, and you could see Rule looking right at Satterfield going, it was either no, or whoa.
Yeah, right.
Like he clearly did not like what they were about to do on offense. Whatever play Satterfield was going with, Rule vetoed it. And you're right. I think we do need to give Satterfield a little bit of grace. He's playing the hand he's dealt the best that he can. But having said that, if this offense still can't get off the ground next year, then it's time to start talking about, okay, is Satterfield the guy because we're paying him a lot of money too. Right. But the other thing for me is that's big with the bye week. We're going to have some of these young receivers come out and play, because I don't know if we can roll out just Billy Kemp, Alex Bullock, and Ty Hahn and have a good enough threat there. So it's like Malachi Coleman and some of these other guys are going to have to start getting some more snaps. And it's kind of one of those nervous and exciting things at the same time, because, when we get in that position, I'm like, well, we've got these guys are on scholarship. Let's see what they got. Like, one of these guys could be an absolute baller, but he's not very experienced. But that's to me where you figure out something in the offense where let's try to get this kid the ball and see what he can do. Whether it's thrown over top to Coleman, or we got a couple of littler, speedier guys, throw them a little flanker screen. We haven't run hardly any screen passes, whether it's to the running back, which I know we're depleted running back, or the receivers. I know we're depleted there, but I feel like that would be a neat little wrinkle to throw in there too. Do a little third and long. Okay, instead of running a quarterback draw, do we have a screenplay in the playbook that we could try to run a little? I remember when
we haven't run a successful screenplay since the Clinton administration.
Hey, Bill, say what you will about Slick Willie Callahan. We had that slick little middle screen to Corey Ross back in the day. That was just beautiful. Just beautiful. So if we get throw a little wrinkle in there, Sadie.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a package of plays even for some of these guys who are athletic. I get
Right.
it. In another, trying to be fair to the offense, it's a little bit harder to learn, an entire offense than it is to throw a defender out there and say go make a play, right? And so you can probably have a little more freedom to do that on defense. But yeah, like just come up with a package of plays for some of these guys. I mean, I think that's if we want to be dancing in the streets on December 15th. With the GoodyearBlimp.com bowl. I think honestly the biggest threat to that happening is our depth, which isn't very deep.
Yeah.
No.
Well, the question I always throw out there too is that you brought this up too, TJ, saying with Sims and Haarberg, let's be honest, besides the Michigan game so far, Haarberg we're winning. We're trending in a direction that we want to go. And I've heard rumblings of now people want to bring Sims back again. And is that something that you guys would agree with? Is that something we think is a bad idea? I don't understand. Why can the Husker Nation never be good with what's happening at that given moment? Why does there always have to be change or something different every week to week?
I don't.
We're winning right now. I mean, I don't have anything against Sims, but things seem to be going okay right now. Why do we want to mess with that juju?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't understand that either, Geoff. That's a great point, because I keep seeing this. Like, well, they're going to have to bring back Sims if they want. Well, why would you? Haarberg's 3-1 in his last 4 starts. I guess why mess? I mean, for me, it wasn't a huge sample size, but I saw Jeff Sims the first 2 games, which we lost, by the way. We talked about it in our intro pod. He couldn't catch a snap, and then and the fact that we should have beat Minnesota, you don't want to blame one guy, but pretty dang costly interceptions, right? I just think you go with the guy that maybe isn't quite as athletic, but damn it, he runs the ball hard.
And you said it too. And you said it doesn't matter how we win, we won.
Just win.
W is a W. And if
just win,
working,
baby.
It's working. Yeah, just win, baby.
So setting aside what we should do, what do you guys think will happen? Because I feel like, I'm not suggesting that the coaches have been lying to us, but I do think the ankle is a convenient way for them to make it seem like they're not really choosing. Well, Sims is still recovering and Heinrich's been playing well. So they just kind of do this week to week thing without having to, and maybe they're protecting Sims a little. I respect that if they're respecting or, protecting their player a little bit. But it also kind of feels like, are they just keeping that option open for themselves too? So they get, well, he's fully healthy now. So the job is his again. My guess is, again, coming back to the depth thing and how often we're running Haarberg, we're probably going to need both of them to get through regardless.
Sure.
Yeah. I think you're spot on, because I even said that after Colorado, after Sims rolled his ankle, I said to several buddies, I'm like, don't you think even if the ankle's somewhat okay, you say you're going with Haarberg because Sims is too dinged up? And I personally think you're onto something there. I think that's what's going on. I don't think you want to flat out say, no, we're going with Heine. I think you just kind of leave Sims where he's at. And if there's signs of struggle from Heine, then you go, okay, Geoff, get in there. Let's see what you got.
I think the way you're going to know for sure who's going to go is if you go to Amigos, they have this Jeff Sims combo special, and it's so good. And it's really affordable. And so if you know, I'm going to keep checking this week, but I'm going to go at least 2 or 3 times. And if it says Heinrich Haarberg special, $8.99 for a crisp meat and a soft taco, Mexi fries and a drink, you bet your ass he's starting that coming game. You can guarantee
first of all, just spot on. This is why you come to the Common Fan Podcast, for this kind of spot on analysis. That's absolutely brilliant, Geoff. But second of all, by the
way, go get yourself a Jeff Sims combo meal at Amigos.
I was just going to say, I didn't realize. So it's a crisp meat and a soft taco and a drink and Mexi fries and a drink.
$8.99.
In this inflation fueled environment, you can get all that for $10, for less than a $10 bill. Count me in.
That's a hell of a
Yeah.
deal. And
Thank you,
Amigos,
Geoff.
if you're listening or you know somebody at Amigos, we will accept sponsorships for this podcast.
I'll just accept one free Jeff Sims special.
There you
I'd be
go.
thrilled with that.
Just don't
Okay.
charge us for the ranch or the cheese.
We've got to keep moving. We talked about the D. I just want to put a bow on this conversation of the offense and the defense. I think the last thing with the defense is how well they play as a team. I don't. Again, I'm not an expert on film or technique or X's and O's. I don't know how many Sunday guys they have. I know Frost always said Reimer would be a Sunday guy, maybe Quentin Newsome, maybe Heinrich, and then maybe some of these young guys. I mean, I think some of these young guys that Rule brought in are really talented, but they're freshmen. I mean, there's a number of freshmen playing, and so I think what's been encouraging is just how they play as a team. Again, I think I said it earlier. It's a really good defense. It remains to be seen, I think, if it's a great defense, because we have seen some elite defenses in Lincoln. But it's really exciting to have a defense that plays so well together, that tackles well, that flies to the ball, that's rotating in a ton of guys, which gives you hope for the future. And it's just being a defensive program again. I mean, we're known for the black shirts. How many years have you heard an announcer say, "And here come the black shirts," and your heart almost sinks, because it's like, well, it's not really the black shirts we know. It's not really the black shirts. These guys are going to give up about 450 yards of offense today. So it feels like we're refocusing on defense as a program. I think that's one of the things that's most exciting to me about this whole operation.
Yeah, Matt Rule gets that too. I mean, like he said, so like I remember on game day when news broke that he was going to get hired, he mentioned growing up watching the Huskers. That's just what he remembers about vintage college football back in the day. And one of the things that he said was that he wanted to get back to Nebraska playing that, smash mouth football, being a defensive team, and going back to the roots of when you used to watch the Nebraskas, the Oklahomas, where these teams would just beat the living hell out of each other for 4 quarters. And I'm just happy that we've got a guy that probably most likely understands that and kind of wants to push it back in that direction, which I grew up with it, so I love it. I'm on board.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And how sweet is it too? You mentioned that these guys, we've got these guys stepping up like Phelan Sanford from Benkelman, Nebraska. I mean, there's a little, and over the years, if you look back, there's always like some guy from small town Nebraska that makes some sort of like little Husker magic play. And I love to making that great hit against Illinois and the ball just pops out. Like some hard-nosed white dude from Benkelman, Nebraska is playing Big Ten Power 5 football and making plays. That to me, that screams Nebraska football and black shirt football just about more than anything.
And
Gifford
he hasn't been the only one.
No, and Gifford from Lincoln, Nebraska. Look at these two white dudes from Nebraska are balling out and helping us win games. I just love that.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool to see. And I mean, I know we're talking defense, but I mean, for God's sake, our quarterback right now is just from Kearney. Like I love the fact that we just have players from
or as Gus Johnson always says, Kearney.
Well, and then
Chuba.
And Ty Hahn. I can't remember where he's from. I'm trying to look this up really quick. He had a catch from Johnson, Nebraska. He played
Johnson Brock.
Class D2.
Yeah, played for Johnson Brock.
Yeah. And I remember, I mean, he was a great athlete. I remember when Frost brought him in as kind of like a preferred walk-on deal or something like that. But he had a catch against Illinois. Alex Bullock
and the Bullock boys from Creighton Prep.
Right.
I love it.
So that's been cool to see. Anyway, okay. Moving on. I don't want to spend too much time on this. One thing we haven't talked about is the special teams. Tristan Alvano, another Nebraska boy, I think he's going to be the future at the place kicker position. We're not here to bag on an 18, 19-year-old kid. He's 1 of 4 on field goals right now. That is concerning. I think it probably would have helped him to have walked into a more stable situation so he could have a year to get acclimated to college football and maybe get into a few games, but not have everything be on his shoulders. And so I just think I only bring this up, the coverage teams, the return teams, largely been sound. We've had a few nice returns, mostly covered well. I mean, I think the biggest thing with special teams right now, outside of the kicking game, the place kicking game, the biggest thing is like I don't feel like I have to hold my breath on every punt. Like,
Right.
I don't feel like I have to hold my breath when we're receiving a punt and like worry what disaster debacle is going to happen now. And it will, one of the many things that will always be just sort of shocking to me about the Frost era is that he just refused to pay more attention to special teams, and it continued to hurt him.
Right.
Anyway, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But I don't know. I know Timmy Bleakroad is still on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
He kicked for us last year. I think when everything we've been talking about is a team where the defense will keep us in the games. The offense has to do just enough. So what does that suggest? A lot of close games.
Right.
And what's going to make the difference? And your Iowa example, Matt, was perfect. Making field goals.
Yeah.
If you can score a touchdown or two and then add 1 to 3 field goals, those field goals could be the difference between a win and a loss. And so that's a concern. Again, I think Tristan Alvano is going to have a bright future at Nebraska. I think he is the future of the kicking game. They got to do whatever they can do, though, to win these next 6 games.
Yeah. But I am encouraged by, to me, the special teams, other than, Alvano, again, true freshman kicker. And he's 3 for 7, by the way, T. I think he said he's 1 for 4. He had 2 against
I'm sorry. He was 3. He was 1 for 4 going into Illinois.
Yeah. But I just want sufficient special teams. Don't have the special teams be the reason that you lost, right? There's encouraging things there. Like we've been, knock on wood, we've been good at catching punts. We had like a crazy blocked punt against Illinois that I think actually hit was it Gunnarsson, I think, or who blocked it? I can't remember who blocked it, but it like hit him in the leg because we had a good rush on, but it counts as a blocked punt. Like we didn't end up turning it into points because the offense tripped over their own what have you. But I just want the special teams to be just good enough. I don't think we're in a spot right now where, like we talked about Iowa, that Cooper DeJean or Cooper DeJean kid from for Iowa had a pick and a punt return for a touchdown. Like I don't know if we're in a spot where we're going to get punt return touchdowns or kick return touchdowns. Just don't fumble the ball. Be sufficient in the special teams game. Don't let it be the reason we lost. And I know you might say, well, it might come down to we need a field goal to win the game. Is that having the special teams be the reason you lost? I don't know when you're putting a true freshman out there, but just be sufficient.
Well, and I know the answer is yes, but do you remember DeMornay Pearsonell?
Oh my God.
Do you remember how spoiled we were? That 2014 game at Iowa. I'm trying to remember. He had at least 1 return for a touchdown and 1 other long one, or was it 2 returns for touchdowns? I think
he returned one all the way and then 1 down like inside like the 15-yard line or something.
He basically won that game for us.
Yeah.
And the guy was such an electric playmaker. So we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but I think you're spot on, Matt. Like just be sufficient and don't take us out of the game or don't hurt our chances to win the game. Right.
Right.
Okay, common fans, we have covered a ton of ground here. This pod has been a lot of fun.
This might be a 2-parter, TJ.
It might be. We'll see how long it ends up being. We'll see how we end up splicing it we'll see what the board of directors decides to do in the editing room. All right, we're going to wrap this thing up by looking ahead to the final 6 games on the schedule. I don't know if this makes any sense. Are you guys Sopranos fans?
I just Googled a scene. You remember the intervention scene?
Oh, that scene is
all-time best.
Peak Sopranos. So it's so funny.
To give you listeners a little bit of background here, we talked about in the previous podcast about how Husker football can be an addiction, especially people that have lived through the really, really good times. And it got me thinking that sometimes Husker football fans need to have an intervention. Maybe they're just a little bit too over the top and maybe are blinded by the goodness that they once had. and need an intervention. And I thought immediately of Christopher Moltisanti during his intervention, and that whole thing completely coming off the rails, and him physically fighting his family. And I feel like that was a good, perfect example of what it would be like to sit down with a diehard Husker football fan.
That's so true.
They need to calm down a little bit.
That's so true. That scene is just peak Sopranos because
Yeah.
none of them are capable of like actually being mature and like executing the intervention in the way that they're supposed to. And so a couple of the Paulie and I think at least Paulie, maybe one or two others end up insulting Christopher.
Yep. I think
they all end up fighting. It's dark and funny, and it's just like peak Sopranos.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this makes any sense. I was going to reference a different episode, but I think it was at the final season or one of the final seasons. Bobby Bacala convinces this rapper that Bobby should shoot the rapper, not to kill him, just to like increase his street cred,
give him some cred,
and increase his record sales. And he convinces the rapper to pay him to shoot this guy. But when he's talking to him, he says, "No, it'd just be the fleshy part of the thigh." Like he's telling him when he'd shoot him, it would just be the fleshy part of the thigh. And I don't know why, but when I look at the next three games, especially, I just keep thinking of the phrase "the fleshy part of the thigh." I don't really know if that makes sense or not, but the Huskers, it's a bye week, and we're aiming to release this episode kind of Friday, Saturday of the bye week to give fellow Common fans something to focus on, some content to focus on during the bye week. So coming out of the bye week, we're going to have Northwestern at home. We're going to have Purdue at home. Then we're at Michigan State. Then we've got Maryland at home, at Wisconsin, and Iowa at home. So again, I think Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa gets a little bit trickier, but you look at Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, two of those three teams have fired the coaches, their head coaches that they thought they were going to have for the season. Like Mel Tucker at Michigan State was in season. Northwestern was right before the season. Purdue obviously has a first-time head coach. None of them have been very good. And so this is really our chance. Like we were just, I dare not say it out loud again, but like if we could run off three in a row, I mean, Husker Nation will be beside themselves. Really feels like we got to get at least two of these three. Don't you think, guys?
I personally, from the looks of the schedule, and you laid it out there perfectly, TJ, that I think that we win the next three for sure. And I don't usually say that because before, in previous seasons, there was no, as they say in the investment world, their past performance is not indicative of future returns. And in this case here, from what I've seen so far this season, I think, especially with the Illinois game, I think that with Northwestern, they're 0-2 on the road right now, as my numbers calculate. So I think we've got a good home game there where we have a good chance. I think we'll be just fine. When it comes to Purdue, another home game, when I was looking at numbers there, I think they're 1-1 for away games. So I think we're looking okay there. And then as far as Michigan State's go, we're going there. It's an away game, but like coaching, like we talked about already, that seems to be a situation for them right now. I've got a good feeling on that one. And then the remaining three games after that, we've got Maryland, Wisco, and Iowa. Maryland's going to probably be a problem. Not going to lie to you there. I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. Wisconsin, I mean, Luke Fickell, first year, still looking pretty good there. Going to be a tough game. I'm not really too confident in that one. I do think we're going to beat Iowa personally, just because of Owens, what he's talking about as far as not the best offensive team, but they're just grinding it out. I think that we do have a shot with them. So all in all, I think that we have a good look at least having positive record by the end of the year and dancing in the streets. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, so I agree. I think if for some reason we win 2 out of the next 3 instead of 3 out of the next 3, and let's hope we at least do that. everything we want to accomplish is still in play, especially with that Iowa game. I mean, you wanted to beat Maryland, you wanted to beat Wisconsin, but I think I agree with you. So here's what I'd like to do though. Let's go through and actually I'm going to ask you each of us to pick what's your hardest game, what's your next hardest game. We're going to rank them hardest to easiest. And then I'm going to force you guys to pick. Geoff, I know you said, some of those games you felt good about, others you didn't feel as good about, but I want you guys to actually pick win or losses for each of them. So what do you think is the hardest game left on the schedule?
For me personally, it's going to be Maryland. That's mine.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
I got Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin on the road.
Wisconsin is what I had as well. Tell us your thinking on that, Geoff.
Well, just from last week, with Ohio State, I know things didn't turn out the way they wanted to, but going into that game in the Big Ten, what's the record now? When I was looking, they've had one loss so far.
I think they're 5-1. I think they're 5-1.
Yeah. So, pretty darn good and I never thought I'd say that from a standpoint of usually Maryland and a Rutgers and those type of teams really aren't that big of a threat. But for some reason, just the hype that they got going in the Ohio State game really kind of turned me on to them. So I think that might be a challenge for us.
Well, and I would also say they like to spread it out and throw it up. And if there's an area where I think, have been most vulnerable, where the defense has been most vulnerable this year, it's been against the pass. Now they come into town on in second weekend in November. So maybe the weather's a factor or something like that. But I think, I think that's a really good point. All right. So I've got us losing to Wisconsin. Owens, what do you have for Wisconsin? And Geoff, where do you have us for Maryland?
I have us losing against Maryland, and I have us losing against Wisconsin. So
okay. I have the same. I think those are 1 and 2. I got Wisconsin as the hardest of the remaining 6. And Maryland as the second hardest.
Okay, that's what I had. So I don't know why I was really grilling you on Maryland, Geoff, because I had Maryland as the next hardest game, and I have us losing that one as well. So Geoff, do you have Wisconsin as your second hardest? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So we're all kind of on the same page. Maryland and Wisconsin are probably the 2 toughest left on the schedule, however you want to rank them. Neither of us. And look, let me say this: what I've seen of those teams, and it hasn't been a ton, but what I've seen of those teams, I think we can play with those teams. I think we can win those games. But I think, where we are as a program, where Husker fans have been, it seems like a lot to kind of pick those as well.
Yeah. I think with those two, also the two head coaches of those teams, right? I think and I don't know if he gets enough credit, Mike Locksley at Maryland, who has been a head coach. He's kind of one of those guys that his head coach didn't work out, went and worked for Nick Saban, and now he's been at Maryland for, I don't know how long he's been there, 2-3 years at least. But he's got some players there, and he's got Tua's brother at quarterback, who seems like he's been there forever, and he's gonna be a problem. He's similar to me, maybe not quite as dynamic as Shedeur Sanders, but similar, where he's athletic enough he can basically. To me, he buys himself time to be able to make the throws. It's not necessarily he's gonna scramble on and then end up running the ball. It's buy myself some time so I can get the ball out. And then in Madison, we're going to Madison the week before Thanksgiving. It's going to be cold. It's the jump around. We'll know, and we'll know more about Wisconsin by then too. I feel like they've kind of been maybe they're not that great. They lost to Washington State, but Washington State's pretty damn good, guys.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I think Wisconsin, Maryland, those two are going to be the toughest.
All right. So we've all got Wisconsin, Maryland as our toughest 2 games. Matty O, what do you have as the next most difficult game after that?
I have the regular season finale, Iowa at home.
That's what I've got.
Just strictly because it's Iowa. It's our border rival. It's Kirk Ferentz. It's Brian Ferentz. It's going to be, I feel like it could be an absolute bloodbath. And I feel like it's going to be one of those 10-7 or 13-10 football games.
Right.
Where a fluke touchdown is the deciding factor.
Yeah.
Special teams are going to matter in that one.
Yes, exactly. I absolutely believe we can win that game. But I think, we as Husker fans need to recognize, as much as not just Husker Nation, but really all of college football loves to make fun of Brian Ferentz and that completely inept offense, and rightly so. We're kind of a similar program right now.
We are, but here's where I come out on that. Like here's where I stand with Iowa moving forward in the future. If we can be as talented or more talented than Iowa, which I feel like most years, even the last 6-7 years where we've been terrible, we've been as talented or more talented, but they've just outmatched us with physicality. If we can be as talented or more talented and match their physicality, there's no reason we shouldn't beat Iowa every single year. And when I watched last year, it was like, okay, we matched their physicality, and then we had one guy who just wanted to rip their throats out, and it was Trey Palmer. If we can get one or two guys in here, and I don't know if they're on the roster right now, if we can get one or two guys like that are just can take the game over with one or two huge plays, we will beat Iowa every single year.
Well, I think for this year, it is not insignificant that Cade McNamara, their starting quarterback, is out for the year.
Yeah.
So obviously, best to him. We never celebrate that sort of thing.
Did you see the guy that came in for him? He's a chonky boy.
Yeah,
he's a thick fella.
He's been eating tombstones with Bert Bielema.
He was like 1 for 9 with like an interception, and like the one completion was like 9 yards, and then he threw like a beautiful touchdown pass to their tight end, like Iowa tight end University, and it's like, oh yeah, now Iowa's up by 2 touchdowns. Like, you gotta be kidding.
Okay, so Wisconsin, Maryland, Iowa, kind of the toughest 3 games on the schedule. We all agree on that. So let's just do this. Let's just do it like this for those other 3: Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State. Give them to me, all 3, hardest to easiest, and tell me if you're calling win or loss for each of them.
All right, I got Michigan State. Michigan State. Sorry, did you want Geoff to go first?
No, go ahead.
I got Michigan State. So hardest to easiest, Michigan State, just because it's on the road.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And then Purdue, just because I think they're a little more skilled than Northwestern. So then obviously Northwestern, I think, is the easiest of the 6 games left.
And what's your call? Actually, did we actually go on the record for Iowa?
Oh, I don't know that I did. We're going to be.
I don't think we did. I got them I put it as a W.
Yeah.
I said that earlier. Yep.
Okay. It's always 50-50. I always have the butterflies, but I put it down as a W.
Yeah. I got us winning the next 3 and then dropping 2 in a row to Maryland, Wisconsin, and then beating Iowa. So that puts us at 7-5, boys. That's what I got. And then maybe that's Kool-Aid drinking. But I really think the way we're playing D, and if we can just not lose the turnover margin, I think we can really make that happen.
I would say not knowing, like, had we not won the Illinois game, I think that would certainly skew my decisions. But I said the exact same thing too, man. His next 3 games, I think we win. Had we not beat Illinois, I wouldn't be that confident in these. But just that Big Ten road win changed my whole perspective on how this season could possibly go, because we can do it. I know we can. It's there. So I agree with Matt. I said next 3. Michigan State on the road is going to be difficult. I would say Northwestern hopefully would be the easiest, with Purdue kind of falling in the middle there.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing, guys. So we're all
we all agreed on all of these, right? Is that what happened?
Wisconsin, Maryland, we had those. We weren't in exactly the same order, but we all agreed that those are kind of the toughest 2 games. And then Iowa is sort of the next toughest after that, which means, as you said, Geoff, our 3 best chances, and this is not revolutionary here. I don't think this is really a deep analysis, but our next best chances for wins are our next 3 games.
Yeah.
Northwestern absolutely needs to be a win. That's a dumpster fire of a program. Purdue with a new head coach, they're not as good as they were last year at all. And then you just got to go into Michigan State and win that game. They have got a lot of problems. This coaching change is unsettling for the program. So you got to win the next 3. Guys, if we get to 7-5, that bowl game, that bowl game could be after Christmas. That could be like a December 26th, December 27th bowl game.
We could be playing Notre Dame.
And maybe it doesn't have a .com at the end of it. right?
I mean, the one
it's a bowl
thing
game people have heard of.
The one thing we shared, I think you shared this maybe with us today, TJ, was that graphic that had the bowl game predictions. And I think it was from Big Game Boomer on Twitter, who historically loves to engage Husker fans by pumping us up or taking us down, but had us in the Las Vegas Bowl against Washington State. Like that would be awesome. I mean, we play against Cam Ward in Washington State.
And was that the one that was that December 23rd?
I think so. I would take that though.
Was that the one I retweeted? That might have been.
I think it was. Well, here's what this is, the one that I'm not totally sure
That's
on,
right.
is Michigan State, right? Here's their schedule coming up before they play us. At Rutgers, they'll probably lose at Rutgers. Rutgers is 4-2. They're decent, right? They hung with Michigan for like a quarter and a half or so.
Well, and Shiano's instilled the physical culture in that program. I mean, those guys, we beat them last year, but that was a rock fight.
Yeah. So Michigan State is at Rutgers. They got Michigan at home, and then they go to Minnesota, and then they play us. So they're going to get absolutely the snot rocked out of them 3 weeks in a row, and then they got us coming to town. So that kind of plays into my win prediction there a little bit. Is their schedule the next 3 weeks before we come to town. I think they're going 0-3, and I think they're going to be real beat up. So I think because that was my one thing where I'm like, okay, we're probably going to lose to Wisconsin. We're probably going to lose to Maryland. Going on the road at Michigan State, I think they're going to be real beat up. They're going to lose the next 3.
And when you have the instability of what they've been through, like.
Right, the mental factor
hard to keep it together as a program. I mean, I guess we saw last year after Frost got canned, that team really rallied around Mickey. So anything is possible. But what did we do? We lost a bunch of close games. So
yeah, we still did.
Well, all right, Common fans. This has been a thoroughly enjoyable sort of midseason review. We were hopeful to get this pod kicked off at the beginning of the season. We just weren't able to do that for a variety of reasons. But we're excited that our second pod ever can be kind of an in-depth middle point of the season review. And then the plan is, on top of other interesting and engaging pods, we'll do a breakdown of every game from here on out for the rest of the season. And then we'll probably host some sort of party when we get to a bowl game, some sort of perhaps remote dancing in the streets type of party or something like that. Please make sure, again, as we said at the beginning of the episode, follow us on Twitter at CommonFanGBR. Send us an email if you want to engage in the discussion, commonfangbr@gmail.com. Would also be great if you want to leave a rating or a review on whatever podcast platform you're following on. Subscribe to the pod, follow the pod, all kinds of actions and all kinds of ways you can get involved with the Common Fan Pod here. But we appreciate you listening. We're having a blast doing this. Again, boys, let's end on a positive note. The future is bright with Coach Rule and the boys. We go into a bye week with a nice big W, and everybody can relax this weekend and just enjoy watching college football. Any final thoughts from the fellow Common fans?
I think just maybe pop in a couple of Tombstone pizzas this weekend and enjoy college football and not have to worry about the Huskers giving you anxiety.
The CFIC is real. Trust no one.
All right. With that, Common fans, we'll talk to you again soon. GBR.
Go Big Red.